Hello, everyone. Welcome to the NRG Series Pioneer 5K. I'm your host, Mason Jordan, my co-host, Devin O'Donnell, better known as Doomwake. And today, it's the end of the series. The end of the season, excuse me there, Devin. We're going to have another series next year. We'll talk about some of those events. Still plenty of magic to come. But for this year, and our players who are competing on the leaderboard, there's 7 rounds at minimum, 10 for top 8, and we're deciding 6 people to go to our end of the year $30,000 invitational. And Devin, let's just take a look at that leaderboard and start talking about it.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a couple of players who are on the leaderboard that are in our feature match area, Gerrick, Alford, and Connor Mullally. We saw Connor top 8 yesterday. I do want that this leaderboard is not currently updated with the standings from yesterday. So both Gerrick and Connor did get a couple of extra points. From the leaderboard, the math that we did, we actually have Gerrick in first place at 138 and Connor in second at 131. So neck and neck. It's
Yeah, Connor Mullally, our player of the year in 2022, wants it back. Last year, sort of kind of took a year off Magic, played a little bit, but focused more on getting his life in order, has everything taken care of, and has come back with a storm, even having to skip a couple of our events just due to life in general, still putting himself in prime position for the MVP. The MVP slot is so valuable at champs. If you don't know, at our end of the year championship, we always give our MVP a little bonus. In the past, it's been swapping players around in pod play. This year, we have a totally new bonus. It's very exciting. You basically get to say on day one, I will not play against one person. So let's say, for the example here, you think Dom Harvey, one of the best players in the field, has a deck that counters you. You just go, I can't play Dom today. And no matter what, even if you and Dom are the only undefeated, you dodge Dom day one. So very exciting, but we still have a lot of other players. And the way this works is for the 2024 yearly leaderboard, which is what we're looking at right now, it's going to be our top 3 players who are not already qualified. You see an orange name, that means they're qualified. Once again, that means Connor Mullally is pretty much locked, but he's playing for MVP against Gerrick. And we're going to cut down to our feature match area as those players are ready to go, because Gerrick is who we're starting with, is in first place, like Devin said, by 7 points, which is not a lot, but is enough that if Gerrick can just tie Connor on the outcome of the tournament, if both players top 8, Gerrick has it locked, but he needs to do better than Connor. So we're starting with Gerrick, and a little bit of a backup spoiler here, Devin. Our backup match is Connor Mullally. We want to see how these players are doing heading into our event. And Gerrick, known for playing Azorius Control, but decided to go with humans here today, Devin.
Yeah, I was going to say, putting down the Teferis in favor of the Thalias that he doesn't want to see from across the side of the table when he is playing Teferis. So, bit of a sort of a, top 10 anime betrayals moment for Gerrick. But with regards to this matchup in particular, Gerrick is playing Azorius Humans, which, you may be familiar with the Humans core, a lot of 1-drops, Dauntless Bodyguard, Lords, Thalia's Lieutenant, and Coppercoat Vanguard. The blue splash, rather, here, actually, Gerrick is sporting 4 main deck copies of Mockingbird, which is an interesting card from Duskmorn, or Bloomburrow, actually, rather. It's one of the newer cards, but card from Bloomburrow, and it's really nice because you can sort of copy your Lords and just help curve out, and your Lord now has flying as well.
Yep. And speaking of new cards from Duskmorn, we had Turn 1 Dauntless Bodyguard, followed by Landwall, followed by Shelter by Ghost. That's going to steal the creature, give the Dauntless Bodyguard War 2 and lifelink and +1/+1. So Gerrick is going to jump up to 23, and Smith is going to fall to 17. And this is a new deck if you haven't been following Pioneer that much. Selesnya Company. Devin, tell them a bit about Company as we do see a Kellen and a passing of the turn.
Yeah, Selesnya Company is kind of, sort of, always been somewhat of a player in the Pioneer format. Basically, the recipe is a bunch of elves and a bunch of powerful 3-drops, and the goal is to just play an elf on 1 and a 3-drop on turn 2. Now, we've seen different variants of this. We've seen Angels in the past, where it's kind of utilizing Resplendent Angel and the Valkyrie, Righteous Valkyrie, to kind of make your board a little bit bigger. But with the introduction of Duskmorn and a couple of recent printings, we have a lot of good 3-drops. Enduring Innocence from Duskmorn, way to get a bunch of cards when you play more creatures. Even Interrupter is an extremely powerful card, just getting to hit any spell, make that cost 2 more. And then things like Archon of Emeria get sort of pre-boarded against Phoenix and Lotus Field. So a lot of interesting cards that we can hit off of Collected Company in this. I wanted to shout out Gerrick, the Sheltered by Ghost. That is a card that, when I don't know if you had the same experience, but when I first saw that card on the spoiler for Duskmorn, I had to read it at least probably about 5 times, because every time I read it, it had a different line of text. That card is really, really messed up.
Yeah, it is really, really strong. And quite impactful. Speaking of impactful, we have Anointed Priest here from Pierre Smith. And this is one of the more interesting hate bears. So a lot, like you kind of mentioned, this Listening Company deck has some really high impact creatures and some like sort of hate berry ones. This is one where we're going to reveal our hand, name an activated ability. Name a card, and activating its ability we're playing it cost 2 more. So this is like a very weird spot where you can name a lot of different things from Gerrick's deck, but currently we just have lands in hand.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about Anointed Peacekeeper is you are allowed to name lands, and Gerrick
Mhm.
does have 2 lands with activated abilities in the hand, the Mutavault and the Aganjo. So, you could name the Aganjo, make that cost an extra 2 mana, so it's 5 mana to activate, or with 2 Mutavaults, even name the Mutavault and force Gerrick to spend 3 mana to animate the Mutavault. So
Mhm.
we'll have to see exactly, maybe we can get a table spotter. Well, if Gerrick's tapping 3 mana for the Mutavault, I have to imagine that's what was named.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we'll get a name from the spot answer from the spotter, and there we go. It is Mutavault because Gerrick paid 3 mana to activate that there. I bet there was some real consideration about, am I supposed to name like Brutal Cathar? Because if that comes off the top, it's game over potentially. But yeah, you see Pierre just taking a second to think here. Once again, this is a 3/1 Mutavault, thanks to the Dauntless Bodyguard in play, and all the humans are going to have Ward. And we're going to see actually maybe just a trade happen. There's also a creature attacking with it who's honestly never seen that card before. I'm just gonna be real. Normally I'm on top of
That
these things. You
is
know how it is.
Oh yeah, that's Veteran Survivor. That is another card from Duskmourn. It has the survival mechanic, so it's a 1 mana
Mm.
2/1, and then at the beginning of your second main phase, if it's tapped, you can exile 1 card from a graveyard, and then if there are 3 or more cards exiled with Survivor, it gets +3/+3 and has hexproof. So a lot of power there for a 1 drop.
Yeah, that is a really strong card. As we do see Kellen here, it's gonna attack. Look at the top card of the deck, get to add it to our hand since it meets the criteria. Kellen, sort of our main story character for the last year in Magic, following him trying to find his dad, Oko. Meanwhile, Skyclave Apparition comes down for the lore experts, taking the Dauntless Bodyguard into the Elf. And, we're seeing sort of Smith's deck do the thing it does, which is sort of, just play to the battlefield, play some kind of good cards, and hope it works out.
Yeah, in terms of the matchup in particular, I think it's a pretty close one. The one thing is, so if you think about it, both players are very good at deploying creatures to the battlefield. Gerrick has a bunch of 1 drops, Pierre has the collected companies to get 2 creatures into play and kind of keep up with Gerrick on the battlefield. But what really comes down to it is whether or not, like, the number of the removal spells that these players draw. So, to give you an example, Pierre has 4 copies of Skyclave. Gerrick has, I'm looking at the main deck, I see 0 copies of Brutal Cathar in the main deck, just the 3 Sheltered by Ghosts. So
Mhm.
it's really going to come down to, can Pierre find enough of the Skyclaves to kill the Lords? And that is exactly what Pierre has done. Because I think that as long as Pierre can keep the Lords off the battlefield, he can sort of, he can size the battlefield a little
Mhm.
bit, maybe a little bit better than Garrett can without the Lords.
Makes sense. Pierre also picked up a really powerful card from this deck off the top of the deck, Enduring Innocence. This was one of the big gets here from Duskborn. If you've been playing Standard, you've seen the Enduring Curiosity part of this cycle probably a lot. This one's starting to make a little bit of a name for itself. It hasn't popped anywhere as much. Basically, every time you play a creature with power 2 or less, you get to draw a card, and when it dies, it gets to become an enchantment that's sort of just on the battlefield. And notably, Devin, it's a 2/1 life linker.
Hmm.
So not only we're not outscaling anything on the battlefield, forcing Gerrick to just pass and more the card draw engine, but whenever we do attack, it's going to be a lot worse. Now, Pierre is down to 10. He didn't block those Mutavaults last turn. We'll get those life totals updated for you in a second here. But now basically every card in his deck is going to be a cantrip as well, which is a great place to be. As we see the Kellen just attack again and do the trigger, and there's a land, he just gets to bid it.
Yeah, the Kellen can make sure Pierre finds more gas. If Kellen hits a creature, that's good. You draw it and cast it, draw a card of the Innocence. And as you can see here, if it hits a land, you can just kind of throw that into the graveyard. The one interesting thing in Pierre's deck about Enduring Innocence, where, it does have that line of text on it that says once per turn, but the once per turn is sort of fake in this deck because you have flash creatures like Aven Interrupter and Collected Company. So you have ways to trigger it on your turn, but also several ways to trigger it on your opponent's turn as well.
Gerrick's finally deciding to use the Agonja in order to get rid of that. Was taking a moment to consider, do I want to activate Recruitment Officer as a way to maybe find some high impact thing? And decides, you know what? If I'm left with, a card advantage engine, maybe I can keep up with this Innocence. Decides to take down the Kellen, which has been just sort of,
Ooh.
oh, and Mockingbird. I'm curious if this is going to copy Enduring Innocence here. Could also copy Skyclave.
Uh, yeah, I'm wondering. I wonder if you want to copy. It's tough. You copy the Skyclave, and then you could Skyclave the Innocence. You could also Skyclave the Skyclave to get a 2/2. A lot of interesting options for Gerrick. But yeah, like you said, Mockingbird is just an absurdly powerful card. Being able to copy anything in the battlefield, even your opponent's stuff, and the creature has flying. Just a really, really, really good addition for this humans deck.
Yeah, and we're seeing it here from Gerrick, just how impactful that was. Is now, we went from Pierre being such a great spot to just being behind. And, went from having kind of decent amount of card engine resources to now Gerrick is the one that has, this recruitment officer that we can just activate, excuse me, and just find cards that matter over and over again while just, sort of bashing with this one Mutavault every turn. And now the Skyclave person gets to attack as well since it has flying from the Mockingbird. And you see what Smith's face there is just like, yeah, I'm just going to block if I'm sorry, not going to block. Excuse me. If I do block, I'm just going to lose my creature.
Yeah, Pierre really needs to find a copy of the namesake card Celestia Company. That's, a way for Pierre to kind of sort of get back into this game. Hit two creatures, maybe one of them's a removal spell like a Skyclave, as we see in Archon of Emeria, not doing a ton in this matchup. But the 2/3 flying body can check the Mockingbird and the Mutavault. So maybe if Gerrick can't find a Lord, then could do something.
Well, what if we find a Mockingbird and we do the Skyclave play again, and then we're going to be
Shit.
attacking for lethal, I think, just due to the amount of attackers we have. We're going to exactly see, Smith might have some card that can interact. Maybe he has like his own Agonjo or something like that. But really great play here from Gerrick, and you see why he's #1 on our leaderboard this year, just playing incredibly well, whether it's control or these creature beatdown decks and what he's doing. And yeah, Smith just has to lose the creature. And we're going to see Gerrick animate up here, and I think attack for lethal, barring anything like a Gonjo or a hasty creature or flying flash creature.
Yeah, 4 attackers, 2 blockers. That's what my math looks like. And looks like Pierre is, surveying the battlefield. Do we have a collected company, maybe? Although that one probably would have got cast a while ago, so can't imagine that one's in Pierre's hand. Yep, and he's going to pack it up. That's game #1 to Gerrick.
Yeah, and great play there by Gerrick. Had some timely draws, used the cards well, had a lot of decisions he could have made with Mockingbird and things like that, and made the right ones. Had a lot of choices with between, a Gonjoing versus Recruitment Officer. Great play there. Let's check out these players' sideboard so we can figure out what they might be doing here. We're going to start with Smith's sideboard. We have 3 Brutal Cathar, 2 Werefox Bodyguard, 2 Elite Spellbinder, 2 Portable Hold, 2 Unlicensed Hearse, 1 Winter Peacekeeper, 1 The Wandering Emperor, 1 Guardian of Faith, and 1 Gideon Allies in the car. Devin, what do you like and why?
So this matchup is all about playing to the battlefield. We mentioned in Pierre's deck list, there's 4 copies of Skyclave Apparition. Gerrick doesn't necessarily have those in his main deck. So Pierre is going to want to go towards more of the Skyclaves, Brutal Cathars. Those are very, very good. Elite Spellbinder, interesting. Although the issue is, the cards that you're hitting are relatively cheap. There's a lot of 1s and 2s in Gerrick's deck, so maybe not want to go towards that. But the Cathars, the Bodyguards for sure. If the game really gets bogged down, Gideon of Allies Zendikar could be a way to make an Anthem, perhaps make your battlefield bigger. I don't hate that one. And then the Portable Holes as well. A lot of good targets in Gerrick's deck.
Yep, and we have some Thalias we get to cut from the main deck pretty freely. Speaking of cutting, let's go check what Gerrick's up to in his sideboard. We have 4 Portable Hole, 4 Wedding Announcement, 2 Unlicensed Hearse, 2 Brave the Elements, 2 Destroy Evil, and Declaration Stone. Devin, what do you like here and why?
So definitely want all of the cards that can remove creatures from the battlefield. So Declaration in Stone and Portable Hole, definitely want to go towards those. Destroy Evil doesn't really have a lot of relevant targets. I mean, I guess you could kill half of the Enduring Innocence, but that's kind of a tough way to do it. And then the other card that I think Gerrick might want to consider is Brave the Elements, where if you look at the creatures in Pierre's deck, there's really not a lot of green creatures. It's just the Llanowar Elves. So for all intents and purposes, Pierre is sort of like mono white splashing elves and cocoa. And I kind of think that Brave the Elements might be a way for Gerrick to, like, if the games do get bogged down, both players playing a lot of creatures and nobody can really attack, I think Brave is a nice way to break through that.
Yeah, we've seen Brave the Elements for about 2 years ago be the reason to play this deck, right? We saw decks like Mono Green clog up the battlefield, doing a very similar-ish idea, right? Like you talked about. And that was kind of the reason to play this deck, right? And having access to the sideboard here makes a lot of sense to me. So I'd love to see it. These players are still sideboarding. So let's talk about next year real quick. And let's get up our upcoming events for 2025. I have some exciting news. So we're going to talk about all the events here on the screen. In just 1 second, if we can move that out of the way there. Thank you for the behind the scenes stuff. But I do want to announce we're going to do 4 team events next year total. And we're going to end both of the seasons, season 1 and season 2, with a team showdown like you're going to see in Indianapolis in just 1 second. So we've heard your feedback. You love team events. We want to give you all what you want. So we're doing it. And we're starting off with the bang February 1st and 2nd back here in Chicagoland, home base. Saturday, showdown 10K. We'll get to that eventually about what the format is. We're still finalizing everything. Sunday, team trial. We'll get, once again, that information out to you on what the formats are going to be. In March, we're going to Madison. Once again, Saturday showdown, 5K on Sunday trial. In May, we're coming back to Chicago with another combo weekend. And then we're going to Indianapolis on June 28th through the 29th for the 10K showdown and then a 10K team showdown on Sunday. We will have those official formats coming very, very soon, and we'll have the back half of 2025 coming soon as well. Let's get back to the feature match areas. I'm sure the players are finishing up their sideboarding. There they go. They're shuffling up, and that was a really interesting game. We didn't have a lot of action, right? Like there wasn't a lot of fireworks, but a lot of just small, tight decisions. Good play from there and Gerrick, willing to do things like just sort of potentially throw away the Mutavault, but also not throw everything away, right? Just simple attacking, building up, pecking away at Smith before eventually getting in for the alpha.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny that I mentioned that. Remember when I said Gerrick didn't have any of the copies of Brutal Cathar in the main deck? Well, he ended up just using Pierre's because he drew 2 Mockingbirds. So that is one thing that I kind of hadn't really thought about in terms of the matchup. So, I did say I think that Pierre's slightly ahead. I actually think that Gerrick might have been ahead game 1. And then when you look at the sideboards, I think Gerrick gains a lot more with the 4 copies of Portable Hole to keep Pierre off of those elves. Because, once you get the turns 3 and 4, Gerrick is going to be double spelling a lot more often than Pierre if the Llanowar elves get removed by the Portable Holes.
Yep. And we have Kellen back on the battlefield once again. The daring traveler.
Speaking of double spell.
Yeah. Speaking of double spell, we have recruitment officer and veteran survivor played just some 2-1s getting on the battlefield. Both pretty good if the game goes long. And
yeah, I was gonna say interesting spot for Pierre where
double. Okay.
I was gonna say it was pretty funny because Pierre's like, okay, I got this 2/3 that checks your 2/2-1s, and Gerrick's actually thinking about lining up a double block. I wonder if that was just a troll move. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it seems like those players were laughing.
Okay.
So it looks like he's gonna take it there. And we see Brutal Cathar, Skyclave Apparition, and Collected Company, and Archon of Emiria in hand. And Pierre kind of an interesting spot, could play one of those high impact 3-drop answer creatures. Could also play Archon to prevent some more dumping of the hand, right? Last turn we saw Gerrick play double 1. Pierre might be afraid of a 1 plus a 2 next turn. He doesn't like values of 2. Looks like we're going to start off by going with Skyclave Apparition, and we're going to take one of these. Taking a second to decide exactly what we want. Also, a huge sign to Gerrick that Pierre has Collected Company in hand. We had a land on top, Devin, in our all 3-drop deck, and we decided to keep it. No reason. Just
it's like when you when you're playing against the Collected Company deck and they play their 4th land and they kind of hem and haw a little bit and they pass the turn. It's like, come on, just play it with a face up at this point. So yeah, Gerrick pretty aware of the presence of Collected Company. When it comes to deciding between the Skyclave and the Archon, if you kind of think about sort of both lines in a weird way prevent a double spell. The Archon indirectly more does it, but you end up taking a lot less damage, this turn if Gerrick ends up double spelling and can hit with 2/3 power creatures. And you're actually thinking about trading here. I don't hate the trade. You're basically downgrading Gerrick's creature. You're trading, Gerrick had a 3/2. He's now getting a 1/1. And notably, the 1/1 is also not a human, so that doesn't get buffed by Lieutenant or trigger the Lieutenant. And yeah, Gerrick also missing a land drop here. So this is getting kind of rough here for Gerrick.
Yep. We're going to see the Daring Tracker get in once again. Archon of Emiria going to go to the hand. And yeah, you're seeing Pierre here sort of doing a great job there, sort of minimizing the battlefield. And I like what you said there too. With Archon of Emiria, how many more things can Gerrick actually deploy from the hand, right? What's kind of the keepable hands he's going to have? You saw him keep a Portable Hole hand. He maybe, kept a hand that's a little slower for the most part too. And we're going to see the Archon of Emiria come down now just because of its raw body size.
Yeah, very, very interesting from Pierre there, choosing to play the Archon over the Collected Company. And part of that I think is, for a near close to mono white deck, really the only blue cards here are Mockingbird. Garrick actually does have a lot of non-basic lands. So, if he draws Pierre noted that Gerrick missed a land drop last turn. If Gerrick is able to find a land, it's likely going to come into play tap because they're, looking at Gerrick's deck, there's only one basic plains. So that could be a consideration there as well. But yeah, very interesting to see the company not fired off there. But the Archon does sort of check the battlefield, makes Gerrick play a little bit more into it.
Speaking of companies, would you another one for turn? I kind of like it, sort of the idea of like a draw spell situation, right? Like you want to sort of, when you're sculpting your hand or your battlefield, know more about what's going on. So get the Archon down and see if Gerrick can attack through it. Because if the battlefield gets stalled up, then you maybe know you can take more aggressively slanted cards off your Coco, right? Versus here, where we're just going to now, know, okay, we need to stabilize the battlefield a little bit. So missing the land drop too probably allows Smith that opportunity, as we're going to see Gerrick
You see players just cackling. I'm assuming there was like a you passed with 4 mana up, didn't play a land drop. I wonder what that could be, Pierre.
Yeah, it could be anything. As we're going to see another veteran survivor come down, that's going to trigger the Thalios Lieutenant. Remember, the Mockingbird is a Thalios Lieutenant as well. And then Gerrick here deciding, do I want to attack in? And we are going to see a Collected Company here. I assume this is at the end of turn, as Smith would probably want to. Oh, just a Werefox Bodyguard and a Llanowar Elf. So, one big hit and legally a hit here in Llanowar Elf. And we're going to see what Smith wants to take with the Bodyguard. I imagine the big Thalios Lieutenant is pretty tempting, but looks like we're going to go for the flying one instead. That makes a good amount of sense.
Yeah, the other interesting thing here is the way that Mockingbird is templated. So it is, I believe it's equal to the amount of mana you spent. So if that bodyguard were to be removed, say by, it's sacrificing it to itself, or if Gerrick finds a way to remove the bodyguard from the battlefield, the Mockingbird would come back. It wouldn't have anything to copy because it would have to copy a token. So I guess you could, make a 1/1 illusion, but it would not be able to copy anything else. Maybe that's the reasoning, Pierre wants to say, okay, well, if I get rid of the lieutenant, and then you find a way to kill the bodyguard, you getting the lieutenant back is kind of rough.
Yep. And we're going to see an attack in here for 2, knocking Gerrick down to 9. And we're seeing a little bit of tank here because we do have cards like Brutal Cathar in hand that we can just use to answer this Thalios Lieutenant right away. But we also have Collected Company. And you see Gerrick shake his head. He knows he's in trouble. Game 1, he dodged all the Cocos, but they're coming back in this game. And you look at Gerrick's hand, he's got a bunch of Wedding Announcement type cards in hand and Brave the Elements. Unfortunately, Wedding Announcement not even going to be good enough if it's played here, but also just 3 mana. So we're just sitting on duds that are duds, as Skyclad Apparition is quickly grabbed here, along with Werefox Bodyguard. That's going to answer Gerrick's entire board. And I have to imagine he's going to pick things up here unless he, wants to fire off the Brave the Elements now to keep his battlefield, which is a reasonable play. But then how is he ever going to finish it off?
Right. And yeah, I wasn't 100% sure if the Wedding Announcements were going to come in. But yeah, you mentioned that Gerrick having a couple of those in hand. I mean, they're really good if you're already ahead on the battlefield, but if you're behind and you're trying to cast that, I mean, it's just you're never ever going to win games like that. So, and the fact that, like you said, Pierre drew 2 companies this game, and yeah, Gerrick is off of it. So we're going to be going to game number 3. Pierre tying us up.
Yeah, it feels like a situation where, and once again, maybe I missaw the card, right? But it does feel to me like Wedding Announcement makes a bit more sense on the play, right? Kind of like what you mentioned. When you're ahead, it's a card that maybe allows you to snowball or something that's like helps you fight through a lot of the removal heavy creatures. So I like the idea of like, Pierre's bringing in, like you mentioned, 5 3-drop creatures that are going to, kill your stuff and sort of swing the battlefield. So it could also just be that maybe we have 1 or 2 of those Wedding Announcements in our deck and we just ended up drawing them, a little unlucky in that regard. But we'll have to see. It looks like both players are just shuffling it back up for game number 3 here. Remember, Smith did not see those cards, so he doesn't have any sort of alarm bells going off that he maybe needs something like a Gideon if he didn't already have it, if the game's going to go that longer route. But I do think Smith sort of wants the game to go longer. I know we saw game 1 where Gerrick was able to play that longer game and sort of pull ahead, but I do think, if we play those game 1s a bunch of times, it's not going to always go that way, or even the majority. I think it's going to be much closer to like, somebody sticks to the first thing and then they run away.
Yeah, and I think Gerrick's, we kind of talked about who is advantage in this match, but I think Gerrick's big advantage is just the fact that he has a lower curve, right? He can get onto the battlefield and put a lot more pressure on Pierre, where,
Mhm.
Gerrick's turn one, so he goes like, turn one, I'm just going to use the term Savannah Lions because Gerrick has a lot of
Mhm.
Savannah Lions, but turn one Savannah Lions, turn two double Savannah Lions, that's a lot of power if you follow that up with the Thalia's Lieutenant. Pierre doesn't really have the ability to do that. And his creatures that kill the cards that kill creatures are 3 mana. So if Pierre is spending 3 mana on a creature to kill one of Gerrick's 1-drops, that's how Pierre keeps up on the battlefield. Like you can kind of see in those sort of games, I think those are the games that Gerrick is going to win. Where, like you mentioned, the slower games that involve wedding announcement, Pierre's probably okay with that.
Mhm. Yeah, and we see both players start to take a mulligan. I was able to see Pierre's hand there, just a bunch of threes, and I think only 2 lands. So not exactly what you're looking for. You really do want to have the Llanowar Elf start. When you're playing a deck like Llanowar Elves, this is gonna be a good one for you standard players come up in about 2 weeks. You're often willing to mulligan. Now, and Pioneer, we have 8 elves, so that makes the mulligan a little safer. But if your hand isn't doing it, take a little bit of a risk, and just skip ahead to turn 3 on turn 2 and call it a day.
Mason, without looking, don't no cheating. How many 3-drops do you think are in Pierre's main deck?
Ooh, I think besides Kellen, maybe a voice, the Thalia. I'm gonna guess there's 18.
21.
Oh,
Close.
dang. The
Close.
Thalias in the main deck really threw me because I was thinking
Yeah.
20, and then I was like, no, he has all those Thalias. Oh, damn. All
But
right,
yeah,
all right,
though
all right.
that is and that is a thing that you mentioned where you really have to be willing to mulligan to a hand that has elves because if you imagine when you're on the draw and your deck has that many 3-drops, if you don't have an elf, you're not competing most of the time with anybody. So you really need to mulligan to elves, especially on the draw. On the play, you can be a little bit more you can keep a wider range of hands when you're on the play. Like maybe you go land go, maybe you play a 2-drop on 2 and a 3-drop on 3, especially if your 3-drop is good enough in that matchup, as we see.
Ooh,
Here's an elf. Well, Pierre does have the elf.
ooh. I don't know exactly. He might have flicked his cards really quick. I think Pierre drew it. I
Oh,
think
did
he
he?
kept like a reasonable 6. And like, yeah, I don't
Oh,
know. I was listening to you. Maybe I missed all, but Portable Hole is going to answer it either way. And we're going to get in with a recruitment officer as well. That's a good draw. Let's see what Pierre has here. And it looks like we have a Temple Garden into another elf. Okay, so maybe we had one anyways. But Elvish Mystic coming on down. We're going to see these 2 ones get in here. I'm going to say I'm curious to see if there'll be a block because you're already at the 3 mana if you have a land in hand. But this could also be a sign of Collected Company, or there'll be plenty of chances to trade later. I thought Lieutenant would have came
I
down already. And
was
here's wedding announcement.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this. So we talked about wedding announcement being not great on the draw. It's really good on this board when you're already really far ahead. And this is kind of the exact start that we were talking about with Gerrick, where if you have a lot of Garrick's hand is the fourth tap land of the Declaration in Stone. But the 1-drop into double 1-drop into wedding announcement on the play, like those starts are very, very, very good for Gerrick. That's where wedding announcement looks fantastic.
Yep, and Pierre misses the land. Makes sense why he wouldn't want to trade there beyond just having the Collected Company. Needs that 3rd mana. As Mutavault is
Hmm.
getting
Okay, we're making mana.
okay, yeah. So
Oh,
we're activating
okay.
it to ourselves and then
Got it.
playing Thalia's Lieutenant. Though, yeah, he was very aggressive with that activation. I was like, but we're a mana short in the Anointed Peacekeeper world. Looks like we're going to be taking a block here.
Yeah, we're gonna trade it for the survivor, and let's see. Does Pierre find? I think he found the second Coco. Did not find land 4.
Yeah, and that's going to be pretty tough there. Gerrick also, has Declaration in Stone in hand. So we could see Gerrick do something like Declaration in Stone, this Elvish Mystic, and just, play a little Stone Rain action as we're going to play a Mutavault, activate Mutavault with that there. We saw the draw there end of turn from the wedding announcement as well. Gerrick has been taking a lot of card draw here. Often you'll see a lot of creatures being wanted to made, but Gerrick, as we saw, just sort of flooding out and not having a lot of threats as Werefox Bodyguard comes down. That's going to get to exile one of the things. Now, I don't think you can actually name Mutavault because it's every creature type.
What do you
Um,
mean?
well, I thought the fox couldn't get other foxes. Am I mistaken?
Let's check. Where Fox body? I thought it was any creature. One
Target
other. Oh,
non-fox.
non-Fox
You
creature.
can't
Okay,
outfox
Judge.
a fox.
Judge,
Yeah, get a judge in there.
can we get a
But,
judge in there and stop it?
yeah.
Can we get a pause? I actually I've never had that come up before. I've never seen
I'm
that
not
text in the
saying
card. So
that, it's been a bit since I've been in the booth. I've had a lot of life stuff going on. I haven't been able to be around.
yeah.
I don't miss these things. You can't outfox me. As we're going to see Enduring come down here. Now we're going to have the players there's going to be an interaction here with the judge. We'll get it all solved. It's probably just going to be a failure to maintain game state, and we're going to continue play from here. But, that is a thing to keep in mind. And also, like you just said, there are basically no foxes in Magic. Like, Rare Fox Bodyguard's the first one we've had. And previously, the best fox in Magic, I don't know if you know this, Devin, was Mutavault. So,
still the best fox in Magic.
Are you? No, you're for sure right. You're for sure right. Can't outfox you.
That is hilarious because I've never actually seen that line of text come up on the card. Now, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to be able to do because a couple turns have passed, and like you said, it's probably a little too much has happened since then. But we will see exactly what happens. But yeah, that is the first time I've ever seen that line of text come up on the card. I did not know that.
Yeah, I honestly, this strikes me as a moment of like in game design, they probably were like, oh, the foxing the fox isn't very fun or whatever. And it's pretty cool if we just put this, you can't outfox me line of text on it, and that solves the problem. It looks like trinket text, right? And they're also probably like, well, it never comes up in standard, right? We're not going to print any foxes in Duskmourn, for example. So it's going to be fine. It's only this card. And then we play Eternal formats or Cube, and we're like, oh, dang. All right, well, that's kind of a cool, emergent gameplay moment. And now we're going to have to get it stuff here. Once again, a couple turns have passed. Most likely what we're going to see here, because there's been so much happened, like Smith's had a turn, it's just going to be a failure to maintain game state on both of these players. This is a thing that, both of you are in charge of, even though it is Pierre's card. It's not going to be the end of the world, I think this is clearly a moment, like Devin just said. There's no malicious intent. Both players are laughing, having a good time. It's just a weird line of text that a normal person wouldn't pay attention to. And my brain's just very normal. And the other way.
Completely normal.
Anyways, we'll have to see exactly how this gets solved here, but I'm sure it'll be handled in just a second here. As I think, it looks like we are just putting everything in the graveyard, and I imagine the judge is asking, for the players' names as they continue on with gameplay from here. Just as a little reminder, since we did miss some stuff there, getting everything taken care of and talking about the outfoxing, Pierre missed on the land drop again. Womp Womp played the Enduring Innocence. Then Gerrick has Declaration and Stoned it, so he's going to get Pierre a clue, which, maybe will help him get this land. And it looks like we were about to animate Mutavault before that got taken care of. Updating to the wedding announcement has flipped to the wedding foyer. I actually don't know the back name of the card.
Wedding festivities.
Wedding festivities. I should have been more confident with foyer. You would have backed me up too. Anyways, so we got a lot of power on Gerrick's side of the battlefield, and Pierre does not have a lot of life. So this might be do or die here on the untapped land for Smith.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we've seen Gerrick take care of the Enduring Innocence. I mean, if Pierre can find the untapped land, it's Gerrick's battlefield is not super duper threatening. There's a couple of Mutavaults, but those can easily be kind of taken care of by the myriad of 2/3s and 3/3s that are in Pierre's deck. So even just Enduring Innocence trading for a Mutavault, getting back the enchantment, having that stick in play for a little bit is pretty good.
Yep. Also, I got to look at Gerrick's hand there. Brave the Elements, Seacrum Coast, and a Mockingbird. Of note with that Values Lieutenant in play, that Mockingbird's going to be really big here. Whether we, go to activate because, I was about to say, I saw the Mutavault getting activated. I wonder if it was to itself, if we're going to see a Mockingbird situation, just like we saw in game number 2. Or maybe we'll see, just an activating attack, and then next turn, double fire up, Anthem the team and hit. And really, what I love about this Mockingbird in the deck here, we saw how powerful it was in game number 2 as being an answer, but also the redundancy in your effects. And really, this deck is starting to look more and more like old modern humans. Now, a lot of our arena kids and COVID kids, Devin, they probably don't know that deck. It's too weak these days. But there used to be this cool deck called Humans and Modern, and it just played a bunch of annoying humans and cards that buffed the annoying humans, and had a card called Phantasmal Image that was basically Mockingbird, but worse in your deck, but better against your opponent's deck, if that makes sense. It's the best way to describe it.
I mean, Mason, I don't know about you. I don't know if you've been looking at the results recently, but I've seen humans pop up in the 5-0 dumps, a couple of times. So it's not over yet. All right, it's not over yet.
Yeah. I don't want to make it about Mono. This is Pioneer's Day to shine as we do this thing going on here, but I got to say it, and this is very petty of me. When they banned Fury, people like humans are going to come back. I was like, God, I hate to break it to you that was not the reason human wasn't playable. And maybe I'm wrong. That's what I was saying there. I was telling a lot of people that day. I was like, I could be wrong. Maybe that was what's happening. But I think it's a power level thing. And
most likely, yes.
every now and again it comes up, and that's sort of what I love about Magic too. Is we see both of these decks kind of do it too, right? These are not decks you would traditionally think as the strongest decks in Pioneer, right? They're both good decks, but positionally they're both really good against things like Phoenix and present these really powerful proactive game plans. And just I think a good healthy Magic format is one where you can play decks like this. You know, you can play your low to the ground white creatures. That's like a really good sign. Or you can play, you know, just a bunch of like interactive ETB focused 3-drop creatures that, you know, just trade off and play a normal game. It's great to see stuff like this. And, you know, I've come to love Pioneer, Devin. You know, in the past, I've begrudgingly been in the booth
Hold
with
on. We need to clip it.
You know, it's fun. It's got a lot going for it now. And I think a lot of that is the representation of the decks. And it's really cool to see it sort of grow and be more than just like, you know, mid-range versus a rampy aggressive deck versus a combo deck, right? Which is sort of what it was for a while.
And, you know, the other interesting thing that I wanted to mention about this is, you know, with regards to Pioneer, we don't, you know, necessarily see a ton of standard sets have a massive impact on Pioneer. But if you look at both of these deck lists, right, Gerrick is featuring Veteran Survivor, Mockingbird, and Sheltered by Ghosts. And Pierre has, you know, Enduring Innocence. And I guess that's the most recent card, but even a couple of like Aven Interrupter and things like that. So just a lot of like recent printings leading to the culmination of everything that's going on. And Mason, I think we're backing stuff up here. This is kind of wild.
No, I think we're playing it out because the clue's in play and we're attacking.
Oh, okay.
We're just mockingbirding. So it looks the Mockingbird tricked you. You thought it was the
thing. The Mockingbird came back, and I thought we were backing it up, but okay. So we copied the Lieutenant, animated the Mutavault. Mutavault's now a 3/3. Lieutenant's bigger and
huge misstep here by Pierre. Devin, he's been mana screwed every turn and drew a land. Clearly, he has spells in hand. Why did he not cast something?
Wow.
On 4 mana. What a Smith is going to feel bad about this one in the future for sure. As jokes aside, we do see the Mutavaults animated up and a big attack coming in. Obviously, Collector Company is about to come down here. But I do wonder if Pierre is supposed to maybe main phase the company to hope to hit Peacekeeper to name the Mutavaults. Because I don't know if there's anything you can hit here besides like double Bodyguard and just start blocking.
Yeah, you could hit some of the. You could hit like I was gonna say Bodyguard to kill the Lieutenant in the Mutavault, but we've had that conversation before. Can't do that. You could even hit something like I don't know, a Peacekeeper and a Bodyguard to Lieutenant, Peacekeeper name whatever, and then the 3/3 can kind of eat the Mutavault. Maybe you take 3 or 4 damage here, fall to 3. But yeah, I guess at 7 life it is a little precarious. But yeah, Pierre's gonna it's unsurprisingly slam the Coco, and let's see what the doctor ordered for Pierre. We have Brukathar Archon.
Okay. So the Archon's huge because remember that Mockingbird is a 2/2 flyer because of wedding announcement.
Right, the wedding announcement. Yeah, so even if we hit the 3/3 Peacekeeper, we couldn't eat the 2/2 Mutavault. So probably the Brukathar hits the big Lieutenant, and then you double block the big Mutavault and take 5?
Yeah. I mean, you could I kind of wonder if you're supposed to go Archon, eat the Mockingbird, right? While it's a 2/2 before it grows, and you just take 5. I'm sorry, you take
7, right?
It's 1, 2.
You can't take the 2 Mutavaults.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah. It is 7. Yeah, that one has a counter.
7.
Sorry, my brain got confuzzled for a second. Yeah, so I guess you could block, but then you get the Thalios Lieutenant back. Huh. Very interesting.
This is weird. This is tough. So Brutal Cathar, we're doing a check to make sure it doesn't say non-human or non-fox.
Yeah, you can't name lizards with Brutal Cathar, and no jokes. It looks like
non-Feldegriff creatures. Anyways.
Yeah.
So Brutal Cathar is going to hit the Mutavault, and then that's going to eat that, and then presumably the Cathar chump blocks the Lieutenant, and you take 3?
Sure.
This is lethal damage, right? This is 7.
Yeah, I was gonna say the wedding announcement might be.
Oh,
okay. So I think what's happening here is Gerrick was saying, "Do your thing," and then I'm gonna respond. Now, Brave the Elements only is white creatures, so that means the Thalios Lieutenant cannot be blocked. So we are gonna do a chump block on the Mutavault. We can still block the Mockingbird, I believe, because I think Mockingbird stays blue. But I'm not 100%.
No. I think the Mockingbird is a white creature. So
okay, yeah.
So blocking Mutavault 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's going to put Pierre to 1.
Yeah, and the Mutavault's gonna die. The other Mutavault will come back without the counter on it.
That'll pump the Lieutenant.
I
Interesting
think it
for
comes
Gerrick
back
to
as well.
cast the Bravery elements there. I wonder if that might just be to protect the Mockingbird.
Yeah, I think it was just a push through damage in general here. It might also just be Gerrick, you can only play one spell a turn. It might just be kind of like out of stuff now. And it's just like, well, if I don't use this now, when am I going to use it? Because I'm going to lose most of my board.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if Pierre has a removal spell for the Thalia's Lieutenant, he's sort of kind
he
of
has the
back in
Wandering
business on the
Emperor.
board, right? Oh,
That's
that's
a
a removal
removal
spell.
spell. Yeah, and it's going to gain life.
So that'll be able to take care of Lieutenant. That'll put Pierre up to 3. So Gerrick is really going to need something like the second Bravery elements. I caught a glimpse. I don't think it was Brave. See a secret. Oh, that's a
Declaration.
Declaration in stone.
That's actually massive here. This might force the Collected Company instead of the Emperor. We'll have to
Hmm.
see exactly how it goes.
Well, I guess what you could do. Oh, right, because if you let it die, and then Emperor kill the Lieutenant, chump block the. You could kill the Lieutenant, chump block the Mutavault with the Elf. Take 2, stay at 1.
Yeah, but then the problem is you don't have the fourth land for the Mutavault. So I mean,
Oh, for the
I
Coco
think
next turn.
you got to play the Coco next turn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is an interesting spot here where Pierre, I think, needed to think through the whole turn and decide once again, do I need to hit Peacekeeper to name Mutavault and hope to hit, kill spell plus thing? Because I think right now, kind of your line has become the best one where it's like you just have to hope to hit off the top.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
you could just spin the wheel and cast the Collected Company. If you hit 2 of the the Brutal Cathar type effects, you get to kill the Mutavault and the Lieutenant, and then presumably if one of them has flying, if one of them is, well, no, I guess you would need
no,
a flyer to
I
block
think
the
I
Mockingbird,
think,
right?
yeah, I think you're right about the Emperor line. I think you just have to go Elf on Volt, then before damage, flash in the Emperor, minus kill the Thalia's Lieutenant, then play a 3-drop hate creature from hand, and then just like make a samurai and pass, and
Okay.
just like take over the game, and hope
Yeah,
that that's
3.
good enough, and that you'll eventually draw a land.
Well, it needs to be a flyer, right? Because Pierre's going to be at 1, so he's going to go up to 3,
Well, no,
take
but if
2
you
to
draw like
1.
I think he has a Werefox Bodyguard in hand, so he
Okay.
can
Oh,
bodyguard
to
down the
clear the
Mocking.
meat. Yep.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Clear the
because the
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird's already there, and then the Samurai trades with the Samurai chump blocks the Mutavault, and you're in like you're barely staying alive territory, basically.
But staying alive nonetheless, that's all that
Mhm.
matters for Pierre here. I mean, yeah, very interesting decision. You could high roll the Coco. I mean, I'm trying to think of if you're in Pierre's spot, is there a Collected Company? Like, is there 2 things you could hit off of Coco that put you in a better spot than just like casting the Emperor and guaranteed not dying? Yeah, Pierre's gonna roll the dice.
I think the only hits are double
Double
Gerrick with
removal
the
spell.
do you want to play the one with the double hate bear suit? Now, and you see him shaking his head. I think that's game. Yeah, the Emperor line, it puts you in a weird spot where you have the Werefox Bodyguard in hand, so you are guaranteed the next turn, but you might, I think, never draw the other land and lose with the Coco in hand. I think Pierre was a little worried about that happening and has taken sort of a higher risk line because of it. But I think this is a classic moment, Devin, of hey, everything was face up. Pierre needed to make this play and think through his whole turn in
Mhm.
response to sort of the first thing happening with the deck and stone. Because had we done that and Gerrick not respond, the anointed Peacekeeper could have maybe stole this game for us. And it
Yeah,
looks like
so the other weird thing too is like even if you hit, say you hit like best case scenario, you hit 2 of the kill creatures, you hit 2 Werefox Bodyguard, Brutal Cathar, whatever. You hit 2 of those, you can take care of the Mockingbird. Go ahead. What?
we forgot to start tracking day and night with Brutal Cathar. And I
Oh.
think there's a Brutal Cathar in hand. Coco, excuse me.
Oh.
So the question is, does this Brutal Cathar, is it day or is it night? And I know there's
Oh
been
my
some
goodness.
ruling added, and I
When did we
believe,
cast it?
huh?
When did we cast the Brutal Cathar? 2 turns ago?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was during the because remember the Werefox Bodyguard joke we made of like, does this hit anything? I think it was during
Oh,
that, and
right.
then just
Okay.
got decked in stone. So I think what's happening here, and I could be mistaken, but if I remember correctly, a judge told me recently that we default, and I believe it's tonight, because the assumption is that a spell wasn't played is the most likely outcome to have occurred. That being
Yeah.
said, I think both players know that actually a spell was played because it was just last turn.
Well,
So I
no,
think
because Pierre didn't play a spell on his last turn, right? It would have to be
Oh,
night.
you're right. Yeah, no,
Because Pierre
he
just
didn't.
passed.
Yeah, because he passed with the Coco. You're totally right. Yeah. Excuse me. So that means it's nighttime, meaning this Coco is definitely higher risk than we both even thought. That's on
Yeah.
us as well. Day night, one of the mechanics of all time. We're up there with the void, and we're gonna have to see, can Pierre get out of it. Now, I thought of a line, Devin, while we were
Okay.
talking here. Double Enduring
Come at me.
Innocence lets you
Mm.
chump block and get the lifelink and some card draw.
Oh, okay.
So
So you
that
draw 2 cards, chump, go to 5, take 2, go to 3.
exactly. And then now the Emperor line is still on the table because we have the mana. And it looks like Innocence is in the hand, in the collecting company pile. I'm calling it his hand because Pierre needs it. He's gripping on for dear life. And clearly, it's an interesting spot here because before I think there was a bit of awkwardness about the Mutavault. I'm sorry about the day
Right.
night now. And now I think there's awkwardness. I think he might have a Werefox bodyguard. And once again, has the awkwardness on Mutavault.
So now what if we go Enduring Innocence plus 3 mana creature to kill something? You can go kill the Lieutenant, Innocence chump block the Mutavault, up to 3, take 2 from the Mockingbird down to 1. But yeah, and then that means you get to keep the creature and the kill creature in place. The Lieutenant doesn't come back, and that's exactly what Pierre hits. So yeah, kill the Thalia's Lieutenant, draw a card off the Innocence, chump block the Mutavault up to 3, stay the same, right? You're effectively gaining 2 and taking 2, and I think this puts Pierre in a pretty good spot.
Yep. And that Thalia's is going to get answered. We draw the card, take a look at it before we make our decision. And then, yeah, Innocence, we're just going to chump block here. You could double block and give them a 2/2 in exchange for the Mutavault, but you would lose both your creatures. Probably not really worth it, especially since Innocence just is going to become a non-creature enchantment. We're going to put it back here to represent it. Maybe we can get a little printout or something. I don't
know. Pierre definitely took a gamble there, right? He
Yeah.
had the ability to survive by chump blocking with Elf and the Emperor, but Pierre taking a gamble, and I think the gamble's going to really pay off because now the board is more clear. Pierre's a little bit more stable and still gets to keep up the Emperor for next turn to be able to maybe remove I guess has to remove the Mockingbird at 1 life. So now you go Emperor, remove the Mockingbird. Maybe the Skyclave has to chump block the Mutavault.
I was going to say, you can Emperor down the Mutavault because you'll gain the 2 life.
Yeah, gain the 2 life.
But you maybe want to just like leave the Mutavault as it's so much easier. And Gerrick shakes his head. He thinks it's Collected Company, but Gerrick, terrible news, buddy. It's the card he's been beating people with all year. It's Wandering Emperor. And Gerrick has been, crushing our events playing that card, and he might get crushed here, as we are going to see. It looks like Gerrick maybe drew a 2-mana spell. I was thinking about playing it, and it was a Thalia's
Another Lieutenant.
That has to be one of the best draws in Garrick's deck here. And
well, it's funny because now the line that Pierre had available to him last turn, he could just take this turn, right? Chump the Mutavault before damage Emperor. That has to be the line this turn, I would assume.
I agree, yeah. The real question is, would you jump with Elf or Skyclave Apparition? I think I like just using the Elf. Don't give him an extra body when you're so low. And, get this Emperor down. And then we did mention this before, Devin, but now that the Emperor's down, right, we're going to make that blocker. But with Innocence, we're going to draw a card, I believe, right? And then we have Werefox Bodyguard to flash in on the next turn, as Gerrick can only just shake his head. As he's like, yep, I've done that a lot. No, that's pretty good.
I play with that card. I know what that does.
Yeah. And we're seeing the power of this Selesnya Company deck. Just such powerful creatures that clog up the battlefield with these strong ETBs. And Garrick's, having a pretty good draw. Not the best draw you've ever seen, but a pretty good one. We're going to trigger Enduring Innocence.
This is a heck of a game to start off with, Mason. I got to say, this has been a really entertaining match to watch, especially this game 3 where, Pierre's just been on the ropes the entire game. Has been so close to just been skirting death the entire time. And you still kind of feel like there's maybe a window for Gerrick, but it's got to be a window that's closing very, very shortly.
Yep. And we're going to have to see how this game ends up, as Smith is trying to figure out, okay, I've got all the resources except for lands. I'm in a good spot. How do I not lose this game, right? As this is going to be our Samurai token. Looks like we're looking for the real one right now, but just put this in play while we wait. And yeah, I think with Pierre having the Werefox Bodyguard, probably just supposed to wait and pass and then get that Innocence trigger on the next turn. and just,
Yeah, like this. Because you want to kill the
clean up.
mutavault. You kind of would rather just kill the mutavault anyways. So now you get
Yeah.
to draw the extra card and kill the creature you want to kill. Even if Gerrick just draws a random human, the 2/2 can't really attack into the opposing 2/2 on Pierre's side. So, as of right now, Pierre's sort of beginning to stabilize the board. Now, we talked about, what can Gerrick really draw from this position? It's tough, right? I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot of card like random humans are okay, but they're not really going to get the job done. Brave the Elements is something we saw in Garrick's sideboard that could potentially do something, but there's only one white creature on the battlefield right now.
Yeah, and it's just not big enough either. As Portable Hole is the draw that will clean up the Samurai. So, I've seen worse draws. I've
Yeah,
seen
so
better draws.
I'll kill the Samurai, and then Garrick gets to line up an attack with the Mutavault here. Well, hold on. If it's Werefox Bodyguard, we had this conversation before.
Yeah,
Werefox
I
can't kill the
think.
Mutavault.
Yeah, but the Werefox can still come in though, and we can. I don't know if you have to target something. That's an interesting question on the Werefox
I think
Bodyguard.
you
I assume you do.
do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's I
Werefox
saw
Bodyguard.
one other
Is it up
target.
to?
So
Oh,
you
up
could
to.
just
Okay.
eat the Thalio's lieutenant, or just remove it from combat. I guess it doesn't really matter. Then double block and kill off the Mutavault, and then the Thalio's lieutenant comes back, and it's whatever. Or the illusion token, whichever one Gerrick thinks is better. Probably the illusion, I would guess. So you can get the Werefox later. Who knows? But yep. And here comes the
No
bodyguard.
Mutavault targeting. There we go.
Yep. Draw the card. It's a pathway. All right. So we're gonna see a double block there.
Why did both die?
Maybe the
Mutavault. Did the Mutavault have a counter on it?
I don't think it did.
I thought it didn't.
Werefox Bodyguard is a 2/2. We'll
The
have
Skyclave's a 2/2. I could have
Yeah.
sworn that Mutavault did not have a counter on it, but maybe I'm missing something. Never mind.
Yeah, same. It might be a situation where the players knew and we didn't. We'll definitely have a judge check in on that here in a second.
Yeah, I knew
But
about the announcement, but
either way, Smith, an interesting spot here, has a land in hand of the Rage of Rich Thicket. Also has Branchloft Pathway. Could see something like Pathway into Elf. Looks like we're going to go Kellen, the Daring Tracker.
yeah. So okay, it looks like it did have that is one of the ones that did have a counter for it, but that was from the second lieutenant that got cast. So that makes
Gotcha.
more sense.
Okay. We're going to see Portable Hole. We drew a card from the Enduring Innocence there, and then Lenora Elf. And we have two different color blockers, Devin. So Brave the Elements, even if it was big enough, isn't going to be a good enough draw. Gerrick's going to need something here like Mockingbird, Dauntless Bodyguard. We need to start building up a battlefield. Another wedding announcement would be great. As Mockingbird is the draw, we can copy Kellen or we can copy Thalio's Lieutenant.
Honestly, just copying Lieutenant to get a flying Lieutenant, and then that means if you draw another human, then you actually have something that can sort of contest the battlefield or that can actually attack through Pierre's blockers.
Yeah, I was going to say, I like this because Gaming Kellen could be nice just to draw some cards, but you can also just make your Thalio's Lieutenant bigger than the board and force some chump blocks. And Pierre's hand is full of 3-drops, right?
Mm-hmm.
So by making the elf get traded off, then suddenly Pierre can't double spell. Now, Lenore Elf will technically allow for a double spell. A little bit of a miss sequence there from Pierre playing the land before drawing her card. Probably not the end of the world, but if we drew a Coco and had a untap land, could be bad.
Yeah, I see some people in chat talking about the round timer. These players do have quite a lengthy extension due to that judge call. So as far as they shouldn't be hit, there shouldn't be any issue with these players completing a match in time.
And also, you know what? This is on me and Devin. It's been a great match to watch, but we thought this would be the faster one.
We did. I know.
we
had a choice.
Yeah,
we had a choice between Gerrick on humans and Connor on Phoenix, and we were like, well, surely the humans deck is going to be over quick.
Yeah, I mean, the thing, though, is it's 11-minute time extension. We've got confirmation from the judge is that Connor was playing versus demons, and I get to say demons on stream. So we'll have to make that happen later.
At some point.
Yeah. Meanwhile, moving into combat, though, and you're seeing Gerrick try to figure out, okay, if Werefox Bodyguard's on the other side of the battlefield, how am I supposed to attack here? Also could be an Avid Interrupter, which would just eat the Mockingbird. So you're going to see Gerrick play around that a little bit. I do think that card's probably got cut, but Pierre was on the play in game 2, and then neither player re-sideboarded for game 3, so it might actually be there. It could be a very heads-up play there from Gerrick as we see Werefox Bodyguard come on down. Now I'm curious.
Not okay.
Not a fox, notably.
Can confirm.
Yep. And he's just going to eat it. And another wedding announcement comes down, and we saw earlier Gerrick really used wedding announcement to draw cards, which has paid off pretty heavily for him. But now the making 1/1s mode is going to be really powerful here, as it's going to give him a constant stream of soon to be lethal attackers. So that wedding announcement will flip, and it's going to grow the Mockingbird, making that now a lethal attacker.
Right. Now the question is, does Pierre have an additional 3 mana, remove a creature card in his hand? I mean, there's a lot of them in the post-board game, but you have to imagine Gerrick does have a lethal Mockingbird where not lethal right now, but if there's a human on top, then that is going to be a lethal threat for Gerrick. Well, I say lethal, but the body card can sacrifice itself to gain 2 life. So there's some weird math to think about with that.
Well, it's weird math because then Thalion enters. That's a human, so the Mockingbird will grow and the triggers. Kind of. Yeah. And it looks like we're switching tonight. I think one thing to mention too is, and Pierre did have an Archon of Emeria, so we could have played that. Looks like we're going to lean on Collecting Company. We've used a lot of those creatures, Devin. We talked about how there's a lot of 3-drops that can have high impact, but Mockingbird off the top, Mockingbird, and it looks like we're going to actually Mockingbird copy the Werefox Bodyguard. Of note, can't name that. It's a fox, but
Wait, so the bodyguard itself is a fox, right? So you can't actually do that.
Well, yeah. So you could.
What would you actually name it?
So I think you're copying it in order to then get rid of the Kellen, because then on the ground you force either a chump with the elf or a trade with the bodyguard. Obviously, elf probably getting chumped before that.
See, I was thinking if you just copy the lieutenant, that makes your current lieutenant a 4/4 flyer, which would be a lethal attacker this turn.
Oh, it looks like we overpaid to maybe make Pierre think about it, because you can overpay in the situation. So really heads up there from Gerrick. Knew he wasn't going to have much use for his mana this turn. So he's like, hey, I'm copying your bodyguard. Do you want a Coco or something in response, right? Pierre's like, nah. And here we go.
Or perhaps even sacrifice the bodyguard.
Exactly, yeah. So heads up play there from Gerrick. Really good. As we're going to see Collecting Company here, I assume this is after the Mockingbird's declared the attack. And we're going to see what's going on here. Now, remember, Pierre could have played Archon of Emeria this turn. Would have actually lost because Mockingbird would have copied the bodyguard. Skyclad Apparition immediately played. That's going to get rid of that big Mockingbird. And we're seeing Little Elf. You see Gerrick go to touch it. He's like, yeah, I'm going to take the one that beats me, believe it or not. Gerrick says, yep, that makes sense. Respectable. We are going to see a draw from Enduring Innocence here as this company deck is starting to reach a point where it can't be stopped. But Gerrick has been putting up a great amount of pushback here and is threatening lethal next turn again in the air if we draw any creature.
Yeah, I mean, look at how good Mockingbird has been this match. We talked about it at the beginning, where this is a huge get to as the white splash for this is, the humans deck, and it's just been able to present basically a lethal threat every single turn to make sure that Pierre needs constant answers. And I don't know about you, Mason, but I've been very, very impressed with Mockingbird in this showcase.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mockingbird has been a card that's really wowed players, myself included, ever since its release. I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And as I just keep seeing it play, I'm like, wow, that's really good. And we see why so long they've been hesitant to, maybe put one that's equal to mana value, let alone have flying. And it's a lot of text, very strong. Pierre here has drawn a Gonjo. So that's a removal spell for the Mockingbird. And I think we might finally start to see some attacks come down here soon. From Pierre.
Yeah, I mean, Gerrick at 20, but with that Chef at Dunes, you got to imagine at some point Pierre can almost certainly get some sort of attack in eventually, where, maybe you crack the Dunes, attack with a bunch of 2/2s. Gerrick doesn't really have good blocks after that. And yeah, the Ganja is a huge pickup because now you have an answer to the Mockingbird, even if that were to become a 4/4. So we'll have to see, what Gerrick finds. Off the top, you maybe want another Lieutenant, maybe another Mockingbird.
I think of note, Pierre has a Brutal Cathar, and it's nighttime, so in on the back. But because he played the elf to start this turn, it will flip on Gerrick's upkeep. So we might see, a Brutal Cathar played that's flipped, quote unquote. It will immediately flip back. It will matter for attacks this turn, but when it comes to sort of stabilizing, this will be fine for Gerrick. I mean, this will be fine for Smith. I'm going to see Pierre here actually just play a bunch of cards. This is really opening up the door to Brave the Elements as a potentially, devastating play. Lethal wouldn't be on board just yet. We still have one elf that's face up. I'm sorry, it's in untapped underneath all this, but
Close though, right? I
it's
mean,
very
I
close.
guess the Brutal Cathar flip's probably going to take care of the Mockingbird, and
Mhm.
then Gerrick draws a copy of Brave the Elements. You have what, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Oh,
5? Yeah, you can just chump block the.
Kellen's legendary too, so we do have a Gondro up still. Excuse me.
Oh, right. Untapping, yeah, keeping 2 lands untapped with the Kellen, so Iganjo is still available. Where, yeah, I mean, like from here, it's really tough to figure out what Garrett could even draw to kind of just get through this battlefield. I mean, it involves Brave the Elements for sure, but like I don't know, Brave by itself, maybe like a creature into a Brave here.
We
That's
also know
gonna,
there's
allow
only two
Cubin to
Braves
attack.
and one's in the yard, so
True. Yeah.
Garrick's on the one outer.
Pierre, thinking about what we want to block with. Looks like maybe a Kellen and a Llanowar elf. Funny, if you're character, you think about trading for the elf just to make Brave a more live top deck.
I think it's the right play.
Yeah, because like realistically, what else can you even draw at this point?
Yeah, I think you maybe had to do that, but also Pierre has so many elves that it
Yeah,
honestly might be a situation where the right play is not to do that. So that way Pierre doesn't think about holding back the elves. Maybe
yeah.
he just alpha strikes with a Chef of Dunes. It's like, hey, I've got 2 or 3 blockers left here. What are you gonna do? And then Garrett top decks. We'll have to see exactly. But I think another interesting thing about this game is, Pierre has a big battlefield presence, but a lot of his creatures are very like tenuous. Like if
Hmm.
they die, things go so bad so quickly that he
It's like a
just
house of
can't.
cards.
Exactly. Yeah, he can't engage in combat. And the second wing announcement, Gerrick has the bigger battlefield. Now, Kellen is in hand, and we can make a bunch of maps, and that might help with the battlefield sizing. But that's a lot of mana, and Gerrick is, can draw things like Adeline, which if we draw Adeline into Brave, that's going to present a ton of damage out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think Pierre. I mean, we're trying to think of how many. We only have the one flyer, the Archon of Emirius, so maybe that can start getting in there. But yeah, past that, it's the human tokens are 3/3s, the bodyguards are 4/3s. So it's going to be really hard for Pierre to sort of present a good amount of blocks here. As we see, there's the Kellen just going to be cast for 2 mana, not going to go on a journey.
Yeah, and this is really highlighting to me how we saw Gerrick in game 2 have the wing announcements, and we were a little dubious on the draw with them. I still think they're better on the play. Believe it or not, going first makes the more expensive card a bit better. But I do think he probably was just right to do it, because if the game stall like this, then the wing announcement is very impactful, as we're seeing in this game. As you know, an attack for 2. I wonder if the guy be getting close to time in the round. We do see our feature match area judge Garrison there checking. We'll know when time in the round will happen. They'll put a little dice there for us, but looks like it's a nothing in the passing of the turn. I actually kind of really like this from Gerrick. He doesn't have anything going on. Flips the bodyguard. Now, I'm sorry, I like this from Smith's side. Unfortunately for Gerrick, he's flipping the bodyguard because Smith can
Right.
now just. Well, I guess
Yeah,
there's
Smith
an Archon, so you can't double spell, right? As long as the Archon's
Yeah.
around, which is kind of awkward.
Well, can bodyguard eat your own stuff, or is it only opponents? Bodyguard says no. You can eat your own stuff, so you could bodyguard the
Sure.
Archon and then play a second spell if you wanted to.
Sure. Yeah, and if the second spell was of another Brutal Cathar, that could be good. Although, I guess flipping the Brutal Cathar is also nice for the Brave the Elements line, right? Now we have a red creature,
Yeah,
so Braves
true.
can't get us. I've played
Yeah,
a
makes
good
it.
bit of the White Human deck, and I've definitely lost some games where my bodyguards are flipped, and I can't Brave.
All right,
Right.
Peacekeeper going to look in a land that's also not going to draw a card off the Innocence. What do you think your name here? If you Pierre Smith, maybe just. I'm trying to think of like what the most expensive card in Garrick's deck that could even matter here is. Like I don't know, Settle the Wreckage or something stupid like that.
Yeah, I would probably name something like Shelter by Ghost, or like something that we've seen. Honestly,
Yeah.
Recruitment Officer is probably the name, because then
Oh, right, because the activated
check that
ability.
and get
Yeah.
out of it. Yeah, and Garrick has the land, so that would mean he has to spend his whole turn doing that, and then his whole turn doing the next thing. So Recruitment Officer is probably your best name. Yeah, I think he's asking to look at his graveyard to see anything.
He sees the Brave.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that I mean, with Gerrick pulling the Brave to the front of the graveyard, you got to imagine that is something on Pierre Smith's mind. So, But yeah, no additional attacks besides the Archon. I mean, eventually.
And we're turn one.
Oh, you see the die there. That is turn one. I was gonna say eventually Pierre can set up some sort of attack, but I mean, I don't know. Pierre's only got 2 combat steps left.
Yeah, now, like you mentioned before, we do have Shepard Dunes.
Okay,
And
yeah.
one of the nice things about this is, right, from Pierre's perspective, is he has the Dune so he can Alpha Strike. And so that means, if he presents lethal, it doesn't matter if his creatures die. But
Yep.
notably, Devin, since we're going to be turn 4 of turns, we can't just
Yeah.
attack with haphazardness, right? Because then Gerrick might get a big enough battlefield to crack back and kill us. So, had this game gone maybe 1 turn sooner, it would have worked out perfectly for Smith. Or on turn 5, he could just, throw caution to the wind, turn sideways, and attack with everything. Now we're in a little bit of an awkward spot, and if you're Smith, you're really hoping of getting an ally of Zendikar in your deck to play and sort of buff the team up. As you see Gerrick kind of being like, what's going on here?
Yeah, the 3/3 can trade for a human token because remember the human tokens are 3/3s with the double wedding festivities.
Mhm.
So 2's going to come across here for Gerrick. Now, assuming that Gerrick draws a land, right? 3 blockers. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 attackers for Pierre Smith. They're all +1/+1 from the Dunes. Gerrick blocks the 3 biggest ones, which would be the Brute, the Bodyguard, and I assume the Kellen. You would take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I count 14 coming through.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think Pierre actually maybe misstepped last turn, not a Gonjoing and keeping the body to play around the body off the top to present lethal. So I was going to say, if I just count the creatures and times them by 2, that's pretty close, and that's not counting their own power. That one's
This
an
mocking
extra.
gonna mess things up now because now we can copy the Skyclave apparition that can take care of. I was
The
gonna
House of
say
Cards.
the Moonrage Brute, but then you have to pay 3 life. Does that?
Well,
have
you can get
much
the.
right?
You also target the Bodyguard. Now, Pierre can sack it to gain some life, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Once you do that, but you'll still get your creature back. And
Well,
yeah,
I forgot what
think
was one of the Bodyguard. We're gonna find out.
it's a
Lieutenant. Okay.
Thalia's Lieutenant.
It's pretty good.
It's really good. And now this board's going to get much bigger. And, that's a huge swing for the damage race we were talking about. We're going to need something like Coco here for Smith if we're going to win.
I was wondering if Gerrick wanted the trigger on the stack animate the Mutavault because he does have 2 extra mana. So even if you wanted to block, you could go animate it now and then pass and have another mana to animate it on Pierre's turn.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like you're choosing not to do that. So yeah, Pierre has got to somehow get 14 damage across.
Yep. Yeah, and I think
We're counting.
A little small misstep there from Smith on sort of innocuous line, right? Of like a Gonjoing your own, the creature that you're about to trade in combat with seems kind of silly, but might have come back here as Pierre now needs to go in the tank.
Yeah, and Mason, you brought up a very good point earlier. Pierre can't just say, sack Shepherdoons, attack you with everything because Gerrick gets the last combat phase. So Pierre has to make sure he's doing the math, and if he can't kill Gerrick, he just has to say go and accept the draw, I think.
Yep. Maybe Pierre can attack enough and then rebuild enough afterwards, right? Trades off a lot of creatures, although Gerrick's creatures are bigger on average because of the double wedding announcement. And then, but maybe he can do something like that where he can Skyclave and show he has another Bodyguard and be like, hey, I would probably have you on the swing back, and maybe Gerrick will concede. But I think what's going to happen here is Gerrick's going to, at worst, draw this game. Remember, Gerrick's playing for an MVP spot this year. So a draw and a loss are basically the same, but a draw is much better than a loss when you're trying to get every single point you can, because Connor Mullally is out there on your heels, along with Cliff Boyardee, who is in the race as well, but behind a couple more points than both those players.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is a really, really interesting turn. I gotta say, Mason, we really picked a good one to start off with. We've seen Archon cast. What were we gonna say?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I did a little checkup. Connor Mullally, our backup feature match, and in second place for MVP, aka Player of the Year, lost to Demons. So, Gerrick would technically be ahead of Connor, and if their match points go the same for the rest of the day, that's all Gerrick needs to do to lock it up and get that free entry into next year. He's on Team Flex slot. They've been dominating, playing every event. He'd love to have that extra $100 in his pocket each weekend, along with being able at the Invitational to be like, hey, I'm not playing against, Dom Harvey or Andrew Ellenberg or something like that. They're not going to stop me. I'm not having to battle against them in day one. As we're going to see Gerrick just attack all out, just basically like, hey, if we're going to draw, I might as well hope to try and win this, or maybe Smith will concede, if the position looks really good.
Did he brave the elements? Are we going blockers? Did we get a brave? No. Can
I
you
was gonna
imagine?
say, yeah, Brave would be interesting. I wonder if you're even supposed to name green, because if you name green,
Yeah, maybe.
then he has to block with the white creatures, and maybe you can convince Smith, like, hey, you have nothing left. Do you mind conceding? We'll have to see exactly how it goes here. Looks like that's not the case once again, but that would have been a very interesting line, as we're going to see a bunch of elves get in the way, and this looks to just be a draw situation going on here. There's no way
like
Pierre can take a lethal. Yeah. And also the fact that Gerrick is attacking like this implies to me that he is not going to concede, because obviously he left himself dead on board. So these players are going to take a draw, and that's going to do it for round one there. Both players had a lot going on that game. There was a lot of things happening. I think when you look back on that one, a little bit faster play and a little bit tighter, we might have got out of it, but that's life. Congratulations, for getting out of round one with a better record than your runner-up there, Gerrick. We'll see if you can keep that up today. We're going to take a quick break. That was our last match, so our next round's going to roll over. We're going to set that up, and we'll be back in just 2 minutes, so grab some water. See you in a second.